What's up, everybody? This is Josh Wright, your host of Beyond the Bell Tower, Season 6. Today, we are excited to have Tirrezz Hudson on the show with us. Say hello, Tirrezz.
Hello.
Hello. Tirrezz is an NCA State alum, class of 2021, and we're excited to have him on the show where we're going to talk about a lot of different things, specifically in the postgraduate space. So we're excited to be interviewing with you,
Ooh,
Tirrezz. So let's get right into it. Let's get right into
let's
it.
go.
Can you talk about yourself a little bit? Where are you from? Where you grew up, and what types of things were you interested in growing up?
Oh my gosh. Let's see. I'm from Winston-Salem. Triad, Trifle. I'm trying to think, what did I do growing up? I loved like video games. I love watching superhero shows and movies. Storm from X-Men is my favorite character, along with some other people. I love to sing. So I was on the choir like growing up and whatnot. And that's about it. Like I love playing with toys, and stuff like that. But I was also a nerd, so I liked sciencey things and whatnot. But yeah, I feel like
Okay.
that's about it.
Yeah, sounds good. And shouts to UPGC. He's also a UP alum. For those of you that know, you'll understand later on in the episode. But yeah, yeah.
Sir.
Great to be hearing from you. And let's talk about, growing up. Would you say that you had a dream job?
I oh, yes and no. I had like if people ask me like what I want to do, I did have answers. Like at one point, I was like want to be a lawyer because I love to argue with people and I love to be like, well, why? At one point I was like a doctor because humans in general, but like also like bodily are very interesting. But I also realized that I feel like growing up, I kind of learned to give the answers that people would like to hear.
Mhm.
Ironically, I still am trying to be a doctor, not medically though. Um, but yeah, if that answers your question, I kind of didn't have an idea of what I wanted to do really until I got to college.
Yeah, okay. So with you being from Winston-Salem, not too far from Raleigh, why NC State? Was there a particular program that you were interested in, or just the
Oh.
reputation of the name NC State? What do you think it was?
Um, Honestly, my answers are I feel like they're very weird. So one, red is my favorite color. And when I say that, I mean I love the color red. So part of my motivation was like, as you're applying for schools, as you're applying to NC State, I'm seeing a bunch of red. That's very like helpful. But the main thing for me, it was really down between NC State and Chapel Hill. And I had family that had gone there. So like my older sister went there, my mom went there, and so I remember helping my sister move in and move out and coming to her concerts because she also was on UPGC. And so yeah, I felt more comfortable seeing myself at State and kind of saying that like I'm going to see State versus like Chapel Hill because I had done their Project Uplift and I had a good time, but just like from like walking both campuses,
Yeah.
I felt better for NC State and I don't regret it. I really enjoyed my time there.
Okay. Cool. Cool. So you talked about a little bit of that NC State versus Chapel Hill type of vibe. You had families that went to both. Would you say you said you had families that went to both, right? Family members
Well,
that
no, my mom and my older sister had both. So if I don't know if I said it correctly, but both my mom and my older sister had like gone to NC State.
Oh, to NC State. Okay, so it runs in the family then. All right,
It
generational. That's
does.
cool. Yeah, keep it going. That's awesome. Did you have any concerns really jumping from high school to college? Was there anything that you were concerned about? And that could be, academic or just life in general.
Mm, I think the main concern that I had going to college was, and I feel like it's like an issue within like education in general, especially in the US, but like I had an idea of like kind of what a major was, but I feel like typically when people like as you're in high school, people are asking you like, oh, what college are you going to? And then once you pick a college, like, what are you going to major in? Once you
Yeah.
have a major, they ask you like, what job do you want? And so those are big asks and big answers. And so I felt pressure to know exactly like as I'm like moving to NC State, I felt a pressure to know what I want to do right after. And so my biggest concern was trying to figure out I didn't know like what did I want to major in, like who did I want to be, like what I want to do when I leave here. I really didn't know. I had ideas of different things. Um, and so many people don't know this. I originally applied to NC State and got in through education. But I ended up switching to the undecided program because I really did not know what I wanted to do. I had a lot of different interests, and so being in the undecided program or exploratory studies did give me the chance to kind of like learn what a major is, what are minors, and like what which ones are offered at NC State and which ones are like the best fit for me. So yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. So coming into college, right? Now you're at NC
Mhm.
State. Can you talk about what your major was and why you were interested in it?
Sure. So coming into NC State, I was undecided for a year, and then I decided on history for my like as I matriculated my first semester of sophomore year, I was a history major. And I went with history because I loved history. I loved taking history classes in high school and even in college, the history classes that I did take, I learned a lot as far as like explaining how we like looking at today, how do we get here? Especially as far as like looking at the people involved, the ideas. But one thing I noticed in being kind of anxious about like what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be, I started asking people, like even in high school, asking people like how did they like whatever job that they had, how did they get there?
Yeah.
And so I kept in college that was useful because I would have TAs and I would ask them like, how did you get here? So for my history TAs, I would talk to them and I found out that a lot of them weren't people. They wanted to be in archival work or be in book stacks. And I am a people person, like I'm people driven. And so I was like, while I did want to study history, I was like, history may not be for me. Um, also had some advisor issues at the time too, so I had a mentor who was in psychology. I took intro to psychology and had some other friends and I knew some people in psychology, and so I talked to them. I emailed and talked to some professors in the department and to psychology, and I really loved it. I was able to take classes. I like within psychology, I was more interested in the social, and even now, like as a PhD student, I still study gender, sexuality, race, and spirituality, and so it was fun to take like psychology of gender, psychology of human sexuality, sociology of gender, and things of that nature. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, I'm a psych major too. And so I'm interested in a
I
lot of
love
those
it.
things.
Psych is lit. Psych
Yeah,
is
yeah,
lit.
it's pretty cool. I enjoy studying. You know, you get to dive into the different topics of why certain people or certain groups do what they do. And
Hmm.
that's always been interesting to me. You mentioned earlier how, you know, law was interesting because you like to ask why. And I think
Yeah,
psychology kind of relates to that as well in terms of asking why a certain
for sure,
behavior
for
is being
sure.
displayed. And so I'm glad you mentioned that because that's really cool too. Um, at State, were you involved in any, you know, extracurricular activities that you want to
Ooh,
mention?
too many. Um, but I say too many in that while I feel like it's important as an undergraduate to like get involved in the university. I I got over involved, and so there are times like I'll look back at my NC State calendar, and it's like, who let me have like my calendar? I use colors and color code them, and it looks like a whole rainbow every single day. What was I involved in? So I was involved in UPGC as soon as I got to NC State. Auditioned, got in, and stayed with it all for years. And absolutely loved it. Um, I I studied abroad, and so um part of some of the funding I got for that when I came back was to be a study abroad like ambassador and go to those events and help in those meetings. So I did that. What else did I do? I went to a few Chenin Blanc meetings. Um, I went to a few French club meetings early on in undergrad. I what else did I do? Oh, I worked as a I say receptionist. That wasn't my official title on paper, but basically I was a receptionist for the exploratory studies department and program, and so that was fun. I loved that. I also worked as a student researcher, from help out with like the like retention rates of Black male students at NC State and things of that nature. And so I worked and did research for that in higher ed. And so that was really eye-opening, pretty cool to see like see how faculty members deal with issues and how they are together and whatnot. I also did work in I worked in so Dr. Cryer Coupe when she was there for her social work lab looking at fathers and fatherhood. I worked with her for my senior year, and that was really eye-opening and very amazing. Um, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm forgetting some stuff, but I did the Trio has a mentorship program I was a part of that. I also was in the McNair program.
Man.
Um, yeah, Booked and Busy was we did that for sure. So yeah, I don't recommend it, but yes. Oh, and on UPGC as the I was chaplain for 3.5 years.
Okay.
So yeah, yeah.
So UPGC is Uninhibited Praise Gospel Choir, for those that may not know. You also mentioned that you talked about, or that you studied abroad.
hmm
Where did you study?
So I studied abroad for it was like the French summer program. It was a month, I believe, or a month and a few weeks. I think it's
Okay.
like 6 or 7 weeks of the summer. And so we flew to Paris and the group of NC State students got to know each other in Paris for a week. And then we met the other students in the program because the program is an international one. So meeting people from the Philippines, China, the US, Canada, and other places. We were in Lille in northern France for the next 4 or 5 weeks. And that was an also an amazing, life-changing summer too. So yeah, I definitely encourage people to study abroad because funds are out there for sure. I got the Gilman, and there are also, but even like as far as like funding certain like departments, like for French, there are also like awards you can get in that like language for studying abroad. So funding is there, and especially trying to tell like Black people, especially like I never thought I would go to France. I thought French was just something I would just study and I would learn about the country. I didn't think I'd actually go. And so getting the opportunity to go, I love telling people, especially like Black students, go, take a chance. I literally just on a whim, I applied, got it, and it worked itself out. So it's possible to go with funds because I also did not have the funds to go. So yes, funding is possible, scholarships is possible. So yeah.
That's awesome. And that's great advice for people to hear about studying abroad. Something I haven't done yet, but just for students in general, it sounds like a life-changing experience. And it also sounds like you had a really, really long resume.
Yeah, we in those 4 years we packed up we did a good bit.
That's cool. That's cool. That's good for you. You have plenty to talk about. Um, can you talk a little bit about the McNair Scholars Program and how it's helped you in your, let's say, scholastic career, right?
Sure. So McNair Scholars Program, I feel that's when I interviewed to get in there, that was one of the questions I had. So the McNair Scholars Program was started really with Ronald E. McNair. I believe he was a physicist, and he worked with the Challenger, and he died with the explosion of the Challenger. But the McNair Scholars Program was created because Ronald McNair he had his PhD, and so this McNair Scholars Program is really for students of color, low-income students, um, I'm forgetting one. There's another category too, but really it's kind of like a pipeline to PhD programs, really to diversify academia. And so they do that by really helping you to be a good candidate for applying to PhD programs and also to get rid of a lot of the gatekeeping around PhD applications and PhD programs. So they have you go to workshops where you're working on different aspects of the application, which was very helpful because I've and talking to even a lot of faculty members that even some of my recommenders, and as I was discussing, like I applied and I had like a choice to make because I got into multiple places, and so a lot of faculty members that when I was asking for help on how to choose, even like a bunch of faculty members admitted that in applying that they didn't really know what about they had issues with the process too, and so they only applied to like to one place, or they only got into one, and so there's a lot of gatekeeping in applying to PhD programs, and so the McNair program is really helpful in debunking that and really helping you stand out. There is like a contract, but it's really to help you stand out as a candidate. So you have to do summer research. If you can do research during the school year, that's good too. But they want you to do summer research. And so I was pushed to do that, and I did it. But it was helpful because one, that's extra funding that you can get. But two, it looks good on the CV. That's research you can put down on your CV that you can talk about in your interviews for PhD programs. And also in that summer research or in doing research during the year, if you're doing writing or writing papers, that can also that my summer research program paper that ended up being my writing sample for some programs. And so it's helpful in that regard. And yeah, the end goal is really to make you be a good candidate and to help you stand out. And also, I think the Rainier Scholars Program is also helpful in just considering fields because I feel like typically people or before getting into graduate school, I thought that it has to be like a straight trajectory. Like I if I have I'm a bachelor's in psychology, my master's, my PhD has to be in psychology too, and that's not the case. Um, I'm doing ethnic studies now. Never thought I would do ethnic studies. Had no idea. I really didn't know what ethnic studies was until last year after taking a bunch of classes in the department. And so like it's possible to leave your field, but also like what is it? How do you one thing that the maintenance course program helped me with as far as if I'm coming, if I have a psych degree, but I have research from higher education, from social work, how do you make that I don't want to say marketable, but really marketable for applying to like stuff like outside of your field. So another component of the McNair Scholars Program at NC State when I was there was that they paired you with a PhD student. They try to stick it within your field. Mine end up being well, we met kind of like organically. He ended up being like in engineering, but that was helpful in that it's someone who can look at your statements, but also can talk to you about being a PhD student, what the steps are like, what applications are like, and whatnot. So it was very helpful for me. Um, one of the things that also took up a bunch of well, the program worked, but you also have you get in what you put out of it. And so I did a lot of conferences and presentations and things of that nature through McNair. But that also part of that is also of my own like volition. So you it's flexible, but also like people like do different things. And so yeah, to answer your question in a roundabout way. Yeah.
No, that was great. Shout out to the McNair Scholars Program. I'm a McNair Scholar
It's lit.
myself.
It's very helpful.
So it is very helpful. And I haven't even graduated yet, but I know it's had a lasting impact and just in terms of the preparation for graduate school, which is definitely something that's on my radar, and
Hmm.
helping with writing tips, research experience, all of these things that these, grad schools look for in an applicant. They really give it to you and they help you to find it and find the resources that help you to build on those things. So definitely a shout out to
Yes.
that program. It's made a big difference on both of our academic careers.
It's
Getting
amazing.
into
Oh, one more
some,
thing.
oh, go ahead.
One last thing for the Maintainer Scholars program, there are cohorts. And
Hmm.
so one cool thing with having that is that you're applying, but you're not applying alone. So like there are other people um who understand that like it's hard to like I didn't do this, but like in discussing like you talk to people and it's like, oh yeah, like you cried with your application, I cried too, or like it's very like communal. And so like you're all applying different programs, but like you're all especially during a pandemic, like we're all struggling with this, like, but like I'm not alone. So it's like if that makes sense, like there's like a community aspect to it too that's really helpful, even with the like administrators and whatnot. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that is definitely a community aspect, ability to go and do outings with the people in your cohort. And
Hmm.
so that's a lot of fun too. Even, even through the pandemic, right? Obviously we
Yeah.
couldn't meet to see each other, but virtually it was still there and it was still a presence pretty much every week. And so that was
Hmm.
giving people to talk to during the pandemic. That was awesome too. Let's get into some of that internship and the research experience that you got into while you were an undergrad. And that's a
Yeah.
really big thing, especially in today's academic space for undergraduate students to still kind of build that research while they're still an undergrad, build that internship experience. Can you talk about some tips and some strategies that you were given or that you used when looking for these programs that kind of spent time with over the summer?
Mm, oh my gosh. In terms of internships and opportunities and programs, for internships, and if you're looking for internships and research opportunities, one thing that's helpful is to get used to telling people what you're interested in. Because so I was interested, like people, I started being known as like the person who was like interested in studying like black men and black masculinity. And so with that, if you're as you're talking to people in your program, as you're meeting with professors, mentors, getting used to telling people in a very kind of like a I guess like an elevator pitch, but getting used to telling people like what you're interested in is helpful because eventually those people have it in their heads that like when they think of you, like okay, you research this. And so if they're talking with somebody else who may need a research assistant or who may need help on something, and which it happened to me, the research job position that I had senior year of working with a collective for trying to help rates of like retention for Black male students, that was really started because there was an administrator in the McNair program who was in meetings and was hearing about how they needed a student researcher to research Black male students and the student experience. And so they thought of me because I'm not interested really in like higher ed research specifically, but in researching Black male students, that touches on an aspect of what I'm interested in researching. And so that's very helpful for connecting. In terms of programs and tips, I would say one biggest piece of advice well, really two that really helped me was one, um, it's hard not to, but like in terms of finding programs and applying to not take it personal. Sometimes a program may not accept your application, or they may not want to like admit you for various reasons, and it's not always your application wasn't good enough. Sometimes it's maybe you need more research experience, but other times, and a lot of times it's maybe the professor that you're trying to work with, if they don't have, I know a lot of professors, if they don't have funding for that for you as a student, they won't take the application. And so all you're ever going to hear and all you're ever going to get is the like, we're sorry, like unfortunately, like we don't want to take you to the understanding that there are a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes that have nothing to do with you, but that are going to directly affect you.
And so you talked about, some of those things that help you to get that research experience, that internship experience, and how it developed you as an applicant. But now let's go into the PhD a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Did you always know that the PhD was for you?
No, I actually, so funnily enough, as a kid, I would tell people like, oh, like, want to be a doctor or a lawyer. And so people started like, people like back home, churches and whatnot would call me like doctor. Um, but I didn't really know the PhD was for me until, I'm trying to think. Honestly, I think it was in talking to people and telling them like what I was interested in general with like life and like in school and whatnot, and kind of like the things that I wanted to do. People started telling me, look into McNair or like consider getting your PhD. I didn't know what a PhD was. I also didn't know what McNair was at all. But then like as I started talking to some of my psychology class like TAs, and some of them became mentors and kind of learning like, oh, a PhD, like it is a degree for to be a doctor, to do that. That's kind of how I learned. So no, I did not always think it was for me. I also never thought I'd get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about when you did get it. What was that initial feeling? How'd you feel about it? And were you shocked, or do you just want to celebrate? What was it?
Like in applying.
In terms of getting into the program, I'm sorry.
Mm.
Of course, you haven't got in terms of getting into the program yet.
Got you. Getting into the program, I was excited, for sure, because it's like most people have tons more research from like their masters of working. Um, and so for me, most of the majority of the research that I had on my CV when I was applying came from like my senior year. Um, and it's not common to get accepted to places straight out of undergrad, one, but to do it as a Black person is difficult. But also during the pandemic, it was just like a lot of odds are beaten. So I was very, very excited, elated, and also kind of scared because it's like, well, dang, like this is like it also becomes real that like it's happening. Things are being done. I'm gonna have to move somewhere. So yeah.
Okay. So you talked a little bit about um, how a lot of people don't go straight into the PhD. Would you mind just speaking on why you decided to go straight into it instead of, going after the master's first?
Sure. So the reason why I didn't want I tried to like not pursue going directly to masters is because I knew that from what I had researched and what I had learned, I know that like with what I want to do later in life, a PhD is is needed for some of it, and then for other aspects of it of what I want to do, a PhD helps with that. Um, and so yeah, also most PhD programs to be competitive have funding or more funding more so than master's programs.
Right.
So that was also a motivator too.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. And I'm finding that looking through my applications as well. So how is that transition from undergrad been from, you know, being an undergrad student to a PhD student? Because you mentioned how it's common for people to go into the master's first and then the PhD, but you decided to go straight in. So what was that transition like?
It was a bit rough, definitely a bit rough. People in calling home and like video calling people from like back in North Carolina, for a good minute people said that like I seemed happier, which is funny. I probably was, but also I was sad for a good minute. I moved in, cried the whole weekend. Um, because who I know is really like East Coast. I didn't really like out here outside of people that I applied, people that I talked to apply here. I didn't really have like friends or family here, so that was definitely. And I also that this is my first time like really moving out of the house, like out of like outside from like college. So it was definitely a big transition. Um, in terms of like, I guess like the actual like nitty gritty of like being like a student.
Right.
The out the work is not harder than undergrad. It's definitely different. The stuff that I'm being asked to do is definitely different. Like really is an undergrad class when I ask you for like really long papers over and over again. Um, but I mean, one thing that I did like about the transition from undergrad to being a graduate student is the work is more concentrated to the field
Okay.
of like the program that you're in. And so with that, I feel like classes and even assignments and the work that I'm doing is more purposeful.
Right.
Because it's not just a class, it's like a general ed class that I'm interested in and I'm doing this assignment. I'm taking this class because it's a it fits within like my program, but this final that has to be a syllabus or a paper, I can use it as a chance to research some ideas or some texts that I'm interested in or that I may use later on down the road. Or maybe like for my program, I have to, when I qualify, one of the things I have to do is make an annotated syllabus and defend it. So taking a class where I am supposed to make a syllabus for a final is helpful to learn the skill of making one a syllabus, and two, that could be a syllabus that like I could use later on. So doing things that are more purposeful in the papers, like even like in writing papers, like yeah. I took a class this past spring on slave narratives and literature. And so like for the final, it had to be an annotated bibliography. And I was working on it. I had like flown back home for something. And my older sister walked by and I was like on page 18 and she was like, "This is what you do for work?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Ew." And I was like, "No, like I love it." The papers are longer for sure for finals and whatnot, but they're on things that I care about and that I want to research anyway, so it's not bad. Like I want to write this much. So yeah, it's definitely been a doozy, but it's been fun because it's also like I'm 23, so it's like yeah, like adulthood. So learning to adults, learning how to like be like a graduate student it has its ups and downs, but overall, I really like grad school. It's a good place for me.
Okay. And I'm really glad you mentioned at the end there, that you're actually interested in what you're doing. And that's what helps you to,
Hmm.
get through those longer papers than what you would have had, say, as an undergraduate. The interest helps you to, really get into it. It kind of helps you to forget about, this is homework, sort of. Is that
Yeah.
kind of what you're getting at? Okay. Okay. I felt that way about some of my classes. Not all, but some of them. um, so now you're in California, all right? And California is, it's on the other side of the country, right? It's nowhere, it's not really close to North Carolina. What were some of the challenges,
Nowhere.
the fears that you had moving away from home like that,
Mm,
if any?
okay. One fear of mine was food because I am a Southern boy at heart.
Yeah.
So I miss my Bojangles.
Oh
I
man.
miss being able to go to the grocery store and certain meats that you would use to season things or like certain products. They're based. I didn't realize this until I got here, but like they're based on the population of people that live there. So some of the foods and meats and whatnot that you can go to like a Food Lion, um, on Western or wherever and get here, going to like a Ralph's or a Kroger, whatever. You're not gonna find that. Like for
Oh,
certain stuff, I have to go to a butcher shop to get, or like find niche places to get the things. Um, yes, I was also concerned, excuse me, about I guess the weather, because to me, because it's like it's lower than North Carolina, like where I am. It's I was like it'll be hot or whatever. It's actually not. I'm in a desert climate,
Okay.
very close. Like I can see the ocean from my department building,
Okay.
and so it's so like the daytime it may get warm. It doesn't really get that. It's around like the 70s year round most it ebbs and flows. But at nighttime because it's like a desert climate, it gets cold, which I like. I love it. So yeah, weather was a bit of a concern, but I really like it here. Um, and yeah, and I've made connections. The Black graduate students that I've met here, I've made some good friends, some good community here, and that's been very impactful in my time in grad school. Yeah, it's been like having a community of people who look like you,
Right.
who are also getting their PhDs,
Right.
and some masters, but like we can come together and like discuss like our struggles, but also we can just come together and just be ourselves and have fun in graduate school and just like be people. And so that's been also been very helpful for like the transition part of grad school.
Yeah, and that sounds healthy too. Moving away from home, still
Hmm.
being able to find that community and to step away from the rigorous classes that you're in and the writings that you have to do just to get away and have that community to socialize with. That's really healthy. Quick question. When was the last
Hmm.
time you had Bojangles?
Woo. Honestly, probably before I came back here,
Oh
right before
man.
classes started. So I'm on the quarter system. So that's one thing that I do and don't like the quarter system. I will say one thing I do like about the quarter system is that so for y'all, and it's like in the semester, y'all classes start around like in August,
Right.
right? My classes didn't start until the end of September, like that
Oh,
very last week. So it's a bit more time for that. I bring that up because I flew back here around the end of August, and that was probably the last time that I had the sweet, sweet taste of Bojangles,
wow. Okay.
unfortunately.
Man. Well, we'll have to ship some to you. How does that sound?
I'll take it. Shoot. I'll take it.
Can you talk about the importance of looking for funding coming out as an undergraduate student?
Um, Funding is very important to look for. I didn't really look for funding. Well, yes and no. Funding's just important for grad school in general because um one thing that I is probably not discussed as much is the fact that like in grad like as an undergraduate, like yes, there are fees attached to it, but you don't really discuss those fees as much. As a graduate student, those fees matter because those fees add up. Those fees of like transportation, technology, health, whatever, those things add up, um, and whatnot. And so, in terms of funding, funding is very, very important. I have been blessed with the opportunity to where in terms of funding, I didn't really look for external funding sources that much, but in the program that I'm in now, it's fully funded, so I don't like I get the like classes, fees, insurance, and all like that. Like it's covered. So yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Really nice. Funding is a big topic. As a part of McNair, they help you make
Hmm.
sure that you're finding those different resources. So I just wanted to know how you went about that and how helpful that is to you. It sounds like you're fully funded, which sounds really cool. Yeah, really helpful too. And then, what advice would you give seniors like myself when looking for graduate programs, right? What are some things that I should look for or that we should look for, when going about this process?
I would say to be yourself. Sometimes it's just they haven't sent out admission letters yet. I'm still kind of waiting to see. And so they may like have you visit. And so they won't call it an interview, but it's an interview from like the faculty members and the graduate students, so, like kind of interviewing you. But even in those interactions, even in those interviews, if you're talking to professors to figure out if you should go to that program, if you're talking to graduate students, be yourself. If there are concerns you have, make those known. Now you're gonna have to like depending on how you make those known, like does matter. But like make those concerns known. One thing that I was concerned about in applying to places was, is it safe for like, one question I would ask is like, especially for graduate students, because graduate students, if you want to really know what it's like to be in that program, really ask the graduate students their experience. Most of them will tell you the honest truth. If they like it or they don't like it, they'll be honest. Every now and then, even if they don't like it, they may tell you that they do like it because Misery does a little company, but for the most part, graduate students will be honest and tell you like, hey, yes, do come here, don't come here. That being said, one question that I did make sure to ask is, okay, do they consider it safe for a Black person to be there as a student, as a resident of the city, what have you? And for me, that was important because I mean, it is 2022, but like anti-Blackness is like it's everywhere. So like, am I going to I think one difference between undergrad and graduate school is that I feel like undergraduate is it has a bubble, which is great. As a graduate student, though, like I am in classes and things, but like the classes and the papers that I'm doing, they're really kind of it's really kind of like a big job training, I guess, or career training for like what I want to do later. And so if it as it being that, it's like life is happening. You're adulting. You have your apartment, you're doing things, you're going to classes, you're going out with friends, what have you. Um, and so all of that to say, to get there, be yourself. If you have certain things that you have in mind when you have your PhD, tell them that. Even if it's a lot of different things, you can still tell them that you want to be all those things. Now, you should do it in a way to where it comes together and it gels and meshes well with like the program's intent for students. But all the things you want to be, all the things you want to do, you can do that and you can be those things, and it's also okay to say them. Um, Another thing of advice, I would say to don't be afraid to consider things outside of the field that you're in or coming from. So for me being a psychology, I really wanted to do psychology. I was okay with like venturing into sociology a little bit. Ethnic studies wasn't really on my radar. Ethnic studies was really because for McNair at NC State, I had to apply to 10 different programs. And so in trying to get to those 10, I got to seven because in a pandemic, it was hard. Also, programs shut down because of funding, but which also in terms of if a program doesn't accept you, it also could just be like overall that maybe that department just doesn't have funding to take anybody that year, which is also a thing. They won't tell you, but yes. Um, and so in doing that, I applied to ethnic studies here just to like have like another place like to have. But one promise I made myself was that any place that accepted me, I'd give them a fair chance. And so to do that, being open to leaving the field that you're in and going into another one, um, being open to it, and also and looking to graduate programs, really think about like what are your motivations? Why do you want this PhD? Like what are things what are the concrete and also abstract things that you want to do with this?
Mhm.
And then what will it take to get there? Because I want to be a researcher and I want to be a professor and whatnot. But I want to give my opinion on like on the news. I want to do outreach. I want to do interventions and workshops and whatnot. And so a PhD would help with that. But because of all the things I'm trying to do, being and with the classes and the ideas that I'm learning now, I understand that had I gone into psychology or sociology, I would still have been like successful, but I like what I'm learning here now because I'm learning things in ethnic studies here that I know for sure I wouldn't be learning like had I stayed in like psychology or sociology. And so just being open to those different things because you never really know where you'll end up and you may end up in a place that you never thought of and it actually ends up being the perfect place for you.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really helpful. You're kind of your story of, being comfortable with the idea of going outside of psychology. I think that's really useful because a lot of people have anxiety around,
Hmm.
staying within what they studied in college. That's pretty much once you get to around junior, senior year, you realize that that's really what you want to get into. And so being
Yeah.
open and like you said, being willing to go where you were accepted, I think that's going to be really good for people to hear. So now we're going to get into something called top takes, and we want to get a little bit more about you, Tirrezz, and your personal favorites, if you will. So your favorite thing about California is
Oh, the weather. People love the weather here, and I see why. I think people tend to like they like the warm weather of it being like in the 70s, maybe low 80s. I like California because it does the opposite. At night, it gets, or where I am, it gets cold. So that's why I like it. I also like the people, but yeah, the people and the
okay.
weather are my favorite things here.
Okay, cool. Cool in the night. Um, you can bring four things to an island that you're stuck on. What are they? What are those four things?
Um, I'm bringing internet. Um, I'm bringing. I'm trying to think. I'm like, I can think pretty big. I'm bringing internet. I'm bringing technology. I'm gonna leave that vague because yes, I want it. Um, I'm bringing people because I am not a handyman. I'm not building my own little house and think, no, that's not for me. I'll live there, but I'm not trying to build it so we can have a little community to help take care of it. Yeah, that's fine.
Um, can you think about the hardest class that you took at NC State? And if you can't, think about one of the hardest classes.
Intro to philosophy.
Ooh, when did you take that?
That was, oh my goodness gracious. I think junior year or it may have been sophomore year. I think it was sophomore in the spring, I believe.
Okay, is that the
Yep.
only philosophy class that you took?
Yep. That was the
Get
requirement.
out of there.
We're gonna take no more. Cause it's not for me. I'm not trying to discuss if this like the TV behind you discussing whether or not that's real. I know. It's like the philosophy of like gender, race, sexuality. I can get into that. The actual stuff like is this TV real? Are these glasses real? I don't have time. I'm not that
Okay,
concerned.
got you. And then the last one, you can choose one superhero to be your personal security guard. All right, so who is securing Tirrezz?
Um, uh, I don't like this question because I feel like I'm torn between the people that are my favorite heroes and the people that I'm just like they're not my favorite hero, but they are like they'd be a good predictor. I'm gonna split down the middle. I would say Storm from X-Men. She is my
Uh,
favorite. That's my favorite like superpower. But I mean like if the woman like you if you can make hurricanes and tornadoes and things, and lightning, I feel like that's like that I'd be good. I feel like I'd be good to go.
all right, all right. But I personally would bring the Hulk. You you know what I'm talking about.
I thought about the Hulk, but that's just like smashing stuff.
Yeah, but he looks intimidating too. So
For sure.
maybe
I mean, who's
maybe
gonna walk
people
up on
will
the
stay
Hulk?
away.
Not I.
Yeah,
Oh no, they would. They would.
yeah,
I'm not gonna. Hey, I'm not walking up to Hulk. Hello.
yeah. All right, well, that's all I have for you, Tyrez. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a great conversation, and hopefully everyone else enjoyed. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and peace out.